Welcome, guys. This is episode 2 of our
Deuce.
Into the Phenomenon debrief. So, Jeff Kircher.
What's going on?
Mike
Sorry.
Sargo, thank you guys again for
You're-
getting together and talking about stuff we did a little while back. Get to finally put it out.
Your humble host, Josh Mar.
Mr. Lamar.
Okay. I like to lay it on thick. You guys will start to recognize that. But anyways,
And learn to appreciate.
Mike, you had something to say before we got started? You were bringing...
I just noticed today there was some things going around social media, some clips from the Department of Energy. I don't have the exact dates. I don't remember the stuff off the top of my head, but we're talking about the 1967 incursion of UAPs interfering with our nuclear warheads. But apparently there's some that are recent as, I believe, 2021 and 2022. And
Wow.
today, they got the Department of Energy to agree to answer questions from some people in Congress. So
Okay.
looking forward to learning more about that.
Because with the work that I did with the documentary crew before the unidentified crew, I only thought this happened, and then Robert Salas, of course, that it only happened a few times, and nothing has happened in recent times.
Yeah, the representative for DOA was classifying them as drones and trying to reassure that there's some programs they have in place to mitigate any risks or threats, but they weren't letting her get away with that. They're saying that, this has happened far back before drones were invented.
Well,
So let's call them what they are. They're UAPs. Let's
Well-
investigate that.
Yeah, I was going to say, and not to be redundant, because I'm sure most people that are going to watch this are going to know, but all the nuclear warheads fall under the purview of the DOE in the U.S. As far as I know the ones that transport
makes
them and
sense.
do things along those lines. And then piggybacking off of Mike's, I know nothing about the today thing, but then there's the famous case that happened outside of London in the UK where they actually walked up on the craft that was there.
So
There's a number of them.
World
They've had, yes, exactly. There were some with nuclear submarines across the board. They've had issues with, or that there's a correlation between UAP activity and nukes, which, falls in line with this.
very
But-
timely for what we're doing.
On that note, Admiral Hunt is starting to become more public. He was the oceanographer for the Navy, and he's gone on 2 podcasts now. He's going to be on the Sean Ryan podcast as well, and he's putting in efforts to really focus on the unidentified submerged objects that they're tracking in the ocean. So it's really interesting information that's really starting to unfold, and some people of authority, positions of authority, that's really starting to disclose.
Yeah, I saw a preview of the Sean Ryan show, and they had him on it. I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, Ryan Graves has, I think it's called the Merger podcast. He put together his organization as well, and Admiral Hunt. That one's available now. If you want to see what he has to say, he has some interesting things to say about USOs and the direction they're going. And yeah, it's a relatively new thing to me. I had a lot of drive. I was looking for things to listen to.
Oh yeah,
So that's the only reason why
we'll do that.
I'm kidding. I have no life. All I do is look at social media. Yeah.
Well, this is social media, so you can lie. You can more fluff it up.
Yeah.
But, so today is the continuation of the interview that we did last year with Robert Salas.
Yeah.
So
We I think we ended on the Cabal,
yes,
talking a bit about Ray Fowler.
Yes.
And I guess we'll see what we're going to talk about next.
And the Cabal is a really interesting subject because it's very like X-Files, like the cancer man, the cigarette guy, who's behind in the shadows trying to interrupt disclosure and people bringing this to the forefront, or even beyond that. What are their motives? Is it more economic, consolidation of power? Jeff, you asked him a question. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I felt like I was learning a lot last time we were doing this, because it was the deepest I had gone personally, actually just listening about breakaway civilizations, which is something that you had mentioned a number of times. So piggybacking off of that, it seemed like economic motives wouldn't make sense in the sense that they already control the means of production. They have all the money supply. They can print it as they want. Like that can't be the driving force behind it if they already have it. So I don't know whether it's power, whether it's more control. I don't know, but
the more you get answers, the more questions you have.
Yeah.
No, like I don't know everything. I just try to use a little bit of logic, but even then, there's a lot of my thought model that I build starts breaking down at some points because there's some questions that we can't answer.
Yeah, and I remember leaving thinking that there was like a bit of an inherent contradiction in some of the things we were talking about, in the sense that, Mike, you had mentioned a number of times, you referred to possibly losing or sustaining America's primacy in the world.
Right.
But
seems global.
Does that even matter if
Right.
this is behind the scenes in any way, shape, or form, right? Like, it seems like if there is such a thing as American primacy, it's because they allow it, and they could take it away at any time. And in the absence of that, would anything substantive, would anything change?
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, ignorance is exponential, like you just said a second ago, but I just have more questions deeply.
Absolutely. That's the fun of this, of what we're doing, though, the investigations and talking to people like Robert. I don't think we'll ever find a concrete answer, maybe, hopefully, but the more you dig into it, like people say, it's a rabbit hole. So let's pick it up. I'm going to play this portion of the interview, and we'll take it from there. Start off again. Okay.
Just let me know.
Yeah, could you start from the part where they called you up to see a psychiatrist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know why I stopped. Okay.
Good?
Yep.
Okay.
So I get this call from the base psychiatrist's office. They want me to come in and talk to the base psychiatrist at the hospital, and I told him I didn't ask for any appointment. No reason for me to see him. He said, "Well, sir, you're expected to be there on this date time." So I go, basically ordered to go. And I show up there, go up to the third floor, base hospital. Nobody there. I mean, it's dark. And finally, I look down at the end of the hallway, and there's a light that comes on, and there's a sergeant that calls me forward, and I say, "Are you Captain Salas?" I said, "Yeah." And okay, well, have a seat. And I said, "Why am I here? I don't have any mental issues." And he said, "Well, I'll be right back." So he goes and talks to the base psychiatrist, comes back, said, "Well, they'll see you now, sir." I said, "Well, I don't know why I'm here." And again, something, so I was cautious.
Some like alarm bells going off.
Alarm bells going off. I said, if I walk in there and they bring up this UFO incident that I had at Malmstrom, goes on my record, then that's going to be a smear on my record for the rest of my career, right? So I didn't want to get involved in whatever, that. So I said, "No, I don't want to go back there and see the psychiatrist. You tell him to come out here and tell me why I'm here in the first place."
Yeah.
So he's kind of gave me a look and then went back there and then came back and said, "You can go, sir." I said, "What?" "You can go, sir." I said, "Well, all right." So I got up and left. But in combination with the fellow I had met a few weeks earlier, who I knew very well from the Air Force Academy, and this strange meeting, I was with the psychiatrist. I concluded that basically they were trying to recruit me into the secret portion of what the Air Force was doing, because that's one of the ways they control witnesses. They give you a little bit of information which is classified, obviously, never to talk about it, and that's how they keep witnesses quiet. So anyway.
Wasn't that already accomplished with the NDA? Though, how is it different?
Yeah.
Or how would it be
As
different?
far as I was concerned, I was never going to talk about it to anybody, and I didn't.
Exactly. Yeah. You said you
I-
pretty much wiped it from your memory until the
No, I
mid-90s.
tried to forget all that. Because of the penalties involved, right? And I was ordered to not talk about it. So I was following orders. This would have been probably another layer of security.
Since the 90s, you've obviously gotten very involved in this field. Do you ever look back on that and wish that you had gone into that office?
No.
No.
Of course, I'd love to know what the Air Force
Exactly.
had. Of course, that would be an appeal. But after I went public, I was dead set on spilling my guts. I was dead set on going and researching and laying out everything I could about this, because I'm convinced that, public has a right to know the fact that we are being visited. And this is going on, and the cover-up is going on. The public has a right to know, and so I'm committed to disclosure in every way I can get it.
So with this commitment and all the research that you've done, I guess, why do you think that they're not willing to disclose this? And who is it that's keeping it from the public?
Well, I'm convinced there's an international cabal or secret group that's holding these secrets, probably led by the U.S. group. And these are probably individuals that have been handpicked within intel agencies in our country and countries around the world, because these incidents have happened all over the world.
Do you think they're picked in a similar manner that you were about to be? In the sense that, like, it would take
probably
somebody that had an experience and then was subsequently recruited in?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. So I think this international cabal is controlling the secrets, and will do anything to keep them. And why are they doing that? I can think of three reasons. One is greed, because I know they've recovered craft, they've recovered bodies.
Placed a pause on it because you brought up some very interesting things. But before going off the rabbit hole, sorry to jumping in there.
No, please.
You were interviewing them, and I would like to hear your thoughts right off the bat as it kind of refreshes your conversation.
It's been a year.
Yeah, it's been a while since I heard any of this. I mean, on a slightly lighter note, I realized that there's his story. There's a luxury to being an officer in the military that people that are enlisted will never know. And I could tell you I couldn't ask, what am I doing here for a fucking dental appointment, let alone a psychiatric.
I was thinking about dental too.
Yeah.
I got away from it
you had
in different ways.
No rights whatsoever. So the luxury about being able to be like, whoa, what's going on here?
No,
something I never knew.
I was thinking about dental too. I'd be like, I want to be out of country.
Yeah.
Not like, hey, what am I doing here? What do you guys want with me?
Exactly.
No, you couldn't do that.
Exactly. But I do remember this part in the interview pretty well, because I was excited to ask him that question about whether or not he regretted not going into that office. And his first answer was no. And not that he's contradicting himself on it, but he had mentioned that he didn't regret it because that's how they silence people. But then a little bit later, he also mentions that to become part of the cabal, he thinks you'd be recruited in the same way.
Right.
And if you had to go back, if you're someone like Robert who's dedicated your life to exposing this, there must be that part of you that looks back and thinks like, oh shit, I was this fucking close to like being able to peek beneath the kimono and see what's really going on here.
He would have gotten read into a lot.
A ton. He could have possibly been one of them at the end. I mean, he's an incredibly bright guy, you know, super successful across the board. So I don't know many people that have something he doesn't.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't he have been able to rise to the ranks of it? But
he could have been the guy.
Yeah, he absolutely could have.
He brings up the point that you mentioned at the beginning of the show about they allow the U.S. to be in a position of primacy. And he said almost exactly that, where it's an international thing. And it's almost like a project manager where it's not, the U.S. isn't in a prime position because we earned it, but because they're assigned it, right? And then it seems like there's a global cabal that's just kind of like a corporate structure. They're working under the project manager, but maybe I'm just spitballing that like the people that the project managers report to are higher intelligence that have that much leverage over our senior intelligence officials to convince them to keep a secret of this magnitude.
So Max, we talked about that last time. You gotta make a distinction between international and global.
Right.
So one of the best examples I can give is in the late 90s. A project came out by the NSA. It was called Echelon. I don't know if you guys heard where it is. Basically, Echelon was a broad project, and inside of that project there was something called Dictionary, and Dictionary was basically a computer program or a computer system that would, at the time, would connect to any phone call around the world, and basically from a list of words that you would talk about, you would say bomb or terrorism or attack or something like that. I'm just throwing, and this computer would recognize these words and instantly like start building up, like flag you, right? But the problem was that back then the United States could not spy on its own citizens. So what the U.S. did was created the program to be global, right? It bought in Great Britain and it bought in Australia. I don't know if it bought in Germany, but I know Australia and Great Britain, because what happened was in the program they gave them the infrastructure to spy on the United States. So Great Britain was spying on the United States, and so was Australia, and on the American citizens, and then the United States was spying on British citizens, right? But the United States was running the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. So when he talks about like international or global, or that's like you got to see it in those type of programs, right? Who has the infrastructure? Who has the technical abilities? Who's put the money into it? Who's like stealing money from the coffers of their country? Like the U.S. is, right? Where are the biggest, let's say, like deep underground bases in the United States, right? There's some in Australia. There's maybe a few in Great Britain and Europe, but that's what I mean. Like so, and then so you take that, right? I'm just building like kind of like the framework for you, so you guys can maybe like we can all kind of like see the bigger picture, right? And so you have that's the infrastructure, right? It's global. The United States is, by logic, is basically the head of the thing. But then, according to, if it's, and I trust these people, the people have told me that the Reagan briefs were real and the Eisenhower briefs were completely real, right? And these people that I trust that were in the know, right? Then you start looking like, okay, then we did have deals with extraterrestrials, right? And so you ring a bell there, Mike, when you say like there is like a project manager, and it could be I don't know if you meant higher intelligence, as in they have more access to intelligence, like data or information, or you mean intelligence as like brain power?
Yes and yes.
Okay, cool.
Some kind of intelligence that's beyond our capability.
Exactly, yes. And in that, I think you hit the nail in the head. That there are, the United States at a certain level is running the thing. And I don't want to say the United States because they're not the U.S. government, because very few senators even know what the hell is going on, right? So the U.S. government is not running anything. But and I don't want to say deep state, because it is a deep state, but it's like a very overused word.
Sure.
Right. But there's like there's a structure of power that's running things, and on the U.S. side, but it is I say global, not so much international. Like it's hard for me to explain. It's very complex, right? And that's how it comes through to me.
I think I'm tracking you. I think with saying international, that's implying that the governments are officially involved.
Yes.
Rather than people who reside in those countries.
Yes.
They're not necessarily directly involved in government.
That's exactly. Thank you.
Global.
Thank you for clearing up. Yeah.
So global supersedes international in this case.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
including
yes.
private
Just making
sector
sure.
that
Yep.
crosses national
Yes,
borders and such.
Yes.
All right. That's a good distinction.
Yeah. So you like kind of like you think, and I think an analogy would be kind of like what's a good company? Sony, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a Japanese company, but it's global now. It has like factories in Mexico and
Right.
stores in the United States, and so it's a global company now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tracking.
Yeah.
And that helps clarify
Yes.
government involvement
Yes,
with
yes.
things. And we're still premising a lot of this on the fact that it's not like an Oppenheimer lateral project with Manhattan where they were both working on nuclear bombs and also engineering
Makes
these
sense.
kinds of technology, but it is in fact based on reverse engineered
Yes.
technology that's created by an intelligence that's
Yes.
superior
Yes.
to ours.
Yeah, and then that really hit a note with me because I've been told that those briefings are real, and so if which I believe they told me the truth. If that's real, then what you said about the hierarchy and the top, it's maybe some type of extraterrestrial framework in a sense.
And I've noticed in communications now, they're getting away from the word extraterrestrials, like the Arrow report's not violating anything by saying that there's no evidence of extraterrestrial, because it seems that the NHI and non-human intelligence would be
Yes, I've seen that pattern too.
right.
Of calling them non-human intelligences.
Yeah, because it may be that it's interdimensional or maybe
Yeah.
subterranean or
It's
something.
it's legal way to get around
Yes,
legalities.
absolutely.
Yeah.
What we associate with outer space things is kind of limited to our
Yes.
process of space time.
Yes.
Maybe far more complex.
Absolutely, yeah.
Could it even be that it's artificial? Like, what if
Right.
what if the craft
But-
had an artificial intelligence and
No.
it superseded any of ours, and we were able to tap into that as well? I don't know. It could be anything.
But the thing is, like, it's everything,
Mm.
right? Like, there's I'm gonna throw a bunch of terms out there, and I'm gonna have a hard time explaining. But there's like interdimensional, and then like interstellar, like civilizations, right? And then higher density beings, and all sorts of things. Like so, and then there's a level where there is some sort of what is the word that I'm looking for? Synthetic intelligence. So I don't want to say AI
Mhm.
because it's a very loaded word. It's synthetic intelligence, and because our interview with Paul Smith,
Right.
remember he said
What consciousness
Yes.
actually is.
yes,
Right.
exactly, and so he said that while he was, and we'll have that debrief here, hopefully after this one, but he talks about remote viewing the moon and remote viewing. He didn't want to call it. He said it was a craft, but he didn't want to call it mechanistic. That's
Right.
what the word he said, and he said that there was consciousness inherent to the craft.
Mhm.
Like it was a thinking being,
Yeah.
a living being itself, but it served as a craft.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
And that point that he brought up is super interesting because when we talk about AI, he's adamant that AI will not become sentient because it lacks consciousness. It's predicated on input of the software engineers.
Mhm.
And so there's something different about what he sensed and experienced on the moon, where he sensed a consciousness component to it
Mhm.
that is not AI. That
Mhm.
is not that then hence the distinction of some
Mhm.
kind of synthetic integration
Mhm.
of consciousness and materialism. And something super interesting about the whole remote viewing concept predicates on the continuity of consciousness after death. This is just to catch the audience up because we're through remote viewing on there and people don't really understand what that is. It's a way of not experiencing things non-locally. Our five senses are predominantly picking up signals locally, but as three-dimensional bodies, we tend to process information in the three-dimensional space. But if we go from the position that the brain doesn't generate consciousness, it's a receiver of consciousness, then there's far more evidence to support that idea than consciousness being a product of neuronal activity. Because of people who've died on the table can describe very accurately what happened during the time they were flatlined. The studies in the University of West Virginia Department of Perceptual Studies, who have documents of kids having information that they shouldn't have about prior history, past lives, and things of that nature. So, circling back to Paul Smith with the mind being a receiver of consciousness, that the brain is like a receiver, and this isn't our true self, not our higher self, then we start to explore what consciousness actually means. And can you consolidate a material to have consciousness embedded within something like a UAP?
Can you create a receiver?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
In some sort of way, whether they're like manifesting it or building it or like pulling it from the ether, whatever it is, that craft is its own being.
Yes.
In a sense.
And we're going to go into a rabbit hole here if we keep going, but maybe I should leave it for next time, but just throwing it out there, with consciousness, if you think of consciousness or a conscious being as not only being receiver, because there are we have computers that communicate, they receive and send messages, right? But and not only I don't want to say self-awareness, but there's receiving, there is perceiving the world around you. So when you receive the message, you also have to be able to perceive it, like look at it and analyze it, right? And then from there, imagination, which is to conceive something, right? So we have all of that, and then I would think self-awareness arises from it. So there's a lot of components to consciousness that I think, and probably even more that I'm leaving out. Somebody way smarter that knows about these things might. But I wonder if when he says consciousness, he's actually perceiving all those things when he's remote viewing these machines, right? All those components to actual consciousness.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to debriefing the Paul H. Smith interview, so we could go into that in quite a bit of detail. But that does circle us back to what Robert Salas is saying with the cabal and trying to figure out the why question. What's the value of keeping it secret? Because it's not financial, as what you're saying. And today we're looking at NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA is popping off. AI is about to dominate. People are worried they're going to lose their jobs, that everything's going to be automated. But if there's an abundance where everybody has access to resources and we don't have to give up our most valuable commodity, which is time, doing busy work to produce money so we could eat and do all that, then what's left for mankind, right? And is it to innovation and creativity is all that's left? Because
that was also supposed to happen during the Industrial Revolution, and it went the opposite way.
We got busier.
Right? We got busier, right? So who knows what this will usher in. I do hope that's the case of what you're saying.
You're talking about a Star Trek kind of
right. And so
future, yes.
If that seems like a positive outcome. So if this technology can solve the energy problem, which is a vast majority of our problems, is fight for energy security.
Yeah.
Right. Why does it need to be withheld? I think power. They have leverage. They have power.
I think Jeff hit made a good point, and that is that there's been all these predictions of good things happening or coming out of technological innovation, right? And I think we've seen kind of the opposite in the modern world, where technological innovation has really screwed us.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not against technology. I love technology.
But there are so many promises of a leisure society.
Yes,
and all of these things. And your work week's going to get cut down, and you're going to have this sort of efficiency. But all it's really done is further divide between the haves and the have-nots. And yes, we do have access to little things, but
and we don't want to forget that even a person living in a developing country has things that a noble wouldn't have, in the Middle Ages, right?
For sure.
In Iquitos, they had
Skylink, right?
Yeah.
And refrigerators.
Middle of the Peruvian jungle.
They have the ability to have more leisure time. You can literally see that they have leisure. They have a soccer field in the middle of the jungle.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So I'm not against technology. There are good things, but we have to be aware of predictions where that promises way more than then we think we're going to get
Absolutely.
So
people get caught in traps.
is that to say that it's being withheld because we're not mature enough to handle the technology responsibly? Kind of like the gun control argument.
I think that's a bullshit trope.
I think
To tell you the truth, I think it does a disservice to humanity as a whole. Like, regardless of how dark things get, I always have this underlying belief that, like, I believe in people as a whole.
I'm with Jeff. Yeah, because evidence time and time again tells you that human beings have been dumbed down over time on purpose, right? They've been. We knew early on that I don't know about these TVs. I haven't looked into it, but like the flicker rate of TVs were gonna put people in induced states of where their subconscious was gonna be manipulated without them knowing it, right? So they subliminal, yes, but there's I think it's a theta states. I think, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
So there is a subliminal aspect to it, but the subliminal aspect only works if the flicker rate puts a person in a certain state, right? So scientists knew that when TVs were in the 50s and 60s, when they were being dealt with, right? And then the school system, when you look at the school system and how, like, there's this myth that the homeschool or the prairie school, right, where they had like 15 kids and they were all different ages, and there's this myth that people were like illiterate and they were ignorant of a lot of things and dumb, and that's not the case. Like they had higher case of literacy, and people were better. Like you look at you read Patrick Henry's writings or people of the time, and they're way more eloquent than any of us sitting here.
You can read.
Yes.
I read this book, and this is going back like years now, but it was correspondence between like Confederate and Union soldiers, and these were supposed to be uneducated men that didn't have it. I've never written anything a fraction of
and
as
look
good
at
as they.
so to circling back, time and time again, the evidence shows that we're on purpose being dumbed down, right? So if there is this technology that could give us leisure and improvement in life, right? I just don't see how keeping it from us, right? When time and time again we see that human beings are smart enough, right? I heard a guy talk about the brain power of a man that lived 60,000 years ago, a human being. You could drop him as a child in any school, and they would be able to make it through and learn all the things that a modern human was learning, right? So we're not dumb. Right. We're being dumbed down, degenerated on purpose. Yeah. So I mean, in a way, that's what I think.
I absolutely agree. In a more modern sense, you go like the Trilateral Commission, and they had a very direct marching orders in order to dumb down the civilizations.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The United States in particular with that one, but I'm sure it's across the board. Yeah. You're right.
So
let's see what else he has to say.
Let's see. Yes.
Advanced tech from that craft, and maybe applied it to weapon systems that we have now, right? And in secret contracts with people like Lockheed, for example, and other aerospace companies, producing things that they wouldn't have been able to unless they had back engineered this technology. So there's money to be made. There's a power from these secrets. Knowing something of this nature that nobody else seems to know is very powerful within government and elsewhere. And then also these secrets are probably being used as bargaining chips with other countries to exchange information about the UFO technology. So I think for these reasons, they're going to hold on to these secrets as long as they possibly can.
What gives you such certainty that they've recovered these crafts or have this technology? Obviously, you had the experience at Maelstrom Base, but that's a much different story than actually having like a tangible craft.
I'll give you 2 examples, and there are many, but the Roswell incident has at least 300 witnesses that have come forward and talked about the reality of it, including a guy I respected very much, and that's Stanton Friedman. Stanton Friedman talked to one of the main witnesses, Jesse Marcel, who was a prime witness, actually saw the debris field, showed it to his son, and I'd met his son, Jesse Marcel Jr., doctor, helicopter pilot, fought in Iraq. I met the guy, had a lot of respect for him, and he told me outright, he saw the pieces of hardware that his father brought and showed him. Went into a great deal of it. So I'm completely convinced that the Roswell crash really happened. And it wasn't just one, it was 2, at least. Other witnesses have come forward. So that's one. The Varginha crash is another that is very well documented. And I had talked to some of the witnesses on that and have some of the documents supporting that. So to me, there's no question about the fact that they have recovered craft. I also knew a man who was on one of the recovery teams.
Okay.
Actually did a forward for his book, Clifford Stone. So.
And he was on a recovery team for whom?
This was Army.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was trained on a recovery team for the Army, and he went on sites where crash sites.
Okay.
I just don't want to miss this part.
Yeah.
This question. Guys like Richard Doty are giving reasons why these crafts are crashing. Do you have any alternative explanation to why these things are crashing?
Do you want me to ask that?
Yeah,
okay. Okay, I didn't know if that was enough. Okay. Do you have any idea why these craft are crashing?
No, I know that there was severe thunderstorms over the Roswell area just before those crashes, and it could have been a lightning strike. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I'd heard that in the past too. The only thing that bothers me, at least, and I don't know anything about it, but is that something could traverse interdimensionally or interstellarly and then be taken down by a thunderstorm seems a little bit much, but I do know that that's what I had heard as well.
Also, Roswell claimed to have the most powerful radars at the time, and that radar signal may have done something.
Interfered with.
Yeah.
Okay. So with the evidence being overwhelming, what does disclosure look like at this point? Like, you know it in your heart. They're not acknowledging it. So how do we go about getting them to disclose it? And what would it look like if they did?
Yeah, right now I've given testimony to the ARROW group, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, right? The focal office under the Department of Defense that's supposed to be studying this issue, and they are collecting historical accounts like mine. And I know David Schindele, who had the incident at Minot Air Force Base in September of '66, has just given his testimony. And Robert Jacobs, who had the incident from Vandenberg Air Force Base, '64, where UFOs filmed flying circles around a dummy warhead going into the Pacific at 10,000 miles an hour. But anyway,
kind of speaks to what we were talking about earlier about, we kind of take the reality for granted, right? But some viewers might still be skeptical about things. And he talked about substantiating the claims and why he thinks these things are reverse engineered or not man-made kind of deal. I immediately want to go to you, Josh, because eyewitness testimony is considered one of the weakest forms of evidence. And that's why I love what Luis Elizondo, Chris Mellon, what those guys are doing. And you were involved directly in pushing things into the mainstream with the show Unidentified, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the security support that you provided. But what that did is it took it past the eyewitness testimony and brought forward evidence collected through various sensory information data collection devices and such, right? And that's maybe the first 2 seasons where we didn't get to the good stuff. So not only do you have data collected through, from the Nimitz and the Go Fast videos and capturing all this information that's objective data, not just eyewitness testimony, but even though there's eyewitness testimony from professionally trained observers. But if you can't talk about it, they didn't get to the part on the show because to take it to the next level, actual having physical things. Are you able to talk about that part at all?
The physical stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want something, I can't talk about it. I just, because, okay, so I was hired onto the show as a security guy because the production was traveling all over the world. And the main concern was like South America.
Yeah.
So traveling to really shady parts of Mexico and definitely Argentina. You'd be surprised. It was very shady. Peru and Uruguay. Anyways, so that was my involvement as the security guy there. And anyways, the part. So there's a level of trust and that, as you know, because you're a executive protection agent, so you get to see a lot of things. But in that sense, like I would love to talk about a lot of things that I saw there, but like, there's a lot that there's some things I can't because it's classified. It wasn't classified, but just out of
confidentiality.
But not only that, like I'm not a snitch.
Most important.
I'm not a rat.
Yeah.
Right. And like there's a lot that I saw behind the scenes, and I just can't talk about it.
Sure.
I can't. I would, dude. I'd be like, I think I'd be pretty famous if I talked about some of the shit that I saw. But I won't. I can't.
I do have to give you credit because I did not believe in any of this stuff. I was so pissed off with Indiana Jones and Crystal Skull when they was like, "Oh, aliens."
But now it makes sense, right?
Now it makes sense, right? I remember what happened is you called me up and you said, "Hey, man, I got a client going to Mexico," and it's routine for me to not know anything for operational security, right? And so I was like, "It's all good. You ain't got to tell me anything. I'm going to help you with your infrastructure, put together a quick reaction force and all that." Remember?
I can always count on Mike to
No.
And so. And then I forgot about it. And then we're in your kitchen and you're cooking and you're like, "Hey, man, you ever heard of ATIP?" You ever heard of DMT?
Yes.
Yeah,
I saw your face. We're like, "Ooh, brother, what is that?"
and then you just started showing me everything. And I'm like, "Oh, you fucking kidding me, dude?"
Yeah.
You can't deny the evidence no matter how, if you're truly a skeptic and not a pseudo skeptic, where you're looking at things objectively and trying to find a valid counter argument. I couldn't argue against the data you're presenting. And kind of like the mummies that we have in South America right now. A lot of people are kind of scoffing at it.
Yes.
And the only argument against these studies that they put forward is that they didn't follow the consensus protocols so it could be peer reviewed, which is understandable, but still, they were still able to look at it even if they did. Can you deny the MRIs? And if you look at the intricacy, why are we still overlooking that? Right?
Yes.
And so if you're truly being skeptical, there's still some counter arguments and when you got to look at there's a reality to it. And that's kind of what led us here today.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's exactly how it happened. I did see your reaction, but I also knowing you for a long time and knowing how you're like a man of processing data. Like that's one of your biggest strengths is like you look at the data and you start making sense of it, and eventually you get the whole thing. And that's why I trusted you to tell you this stuff.
Yeah,
but
and I almost ratted you out. So it's just
no, it's cool. Eventually, people are gonna find out. I can't hide some of this stuff. But no, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing because I want to find the truth on my own.
Yeah.
But not on my own, with you guys,
of course.
Right. But like I said, we're working pretty much on our own, self-funded.
Yeah.
Following leads,
yeah.
Kind of like real investigators. I don't want to say people out there are not real investigators, but we don't have the support of the government or rich or very wealthy corporations or anything like that.
Which is why this has been sitting here
Yes.
for a hot second.
Yes.
Thanks to our man Chauncey, you got to give him a shout out
Yes,
for
absolutely.
putting us in this
Thank you.
position. And let's not forget Jeff's expertise and insight. And I'm super grateful having met you. And we started rolling in the garage doing jujitsu.
Yeah.
You know, but that's still on point with this part of Robert Salas substantiating why he believes this is non-human intelligence that created these crafts and the level of evidence that we're at now.
Yeah, and I was thinking about, I guess, two things based off of this, because not much has changed as far as like the government disclosing anything since we did this interview and up until recently. And there was the, I'm going to fuck the name of it up. You guys will know it. Something Blue that came out. I was listening to it a couple weeks ago, and it was released, but it basically showed that there's court filings going through the system right now where service members who I believe, I might again mess this up, are deceased, but they were in proximity to these crafts, and it had an adverse effect on their body, and they're fighting for benefits to be able to get it. And they've all but acknowledged that happened. Now it's just
when working there's a chapter, there's a episode of Unidentified. Lou wanted to get into that. He wanted to, he interviewed a service member. I think it was like an Air Force guy who had been exposed to, I think, radiation from a craft. He was injured, and his service record, his medical record reflected that. And the issue was that the military, I don't think the military wanted to compensate him, because they were like, yeah, you were injured by something, but you know, like
Exactly.
kind of like any veteran is typical, like
for sure. It's like an insurance
related,
company.
yeah.
Yes, as an act of God,
Yes.
or whatever it was.
Yeah. And so for the longest time, and I think it was Senator John McCain who brought that to the forefront, and they were able to pull out his records, and then blah blah, and then they were able to help him out. I think he's being helped. But to your point, I think it goes deeper than that. I think people have died.
Yeah.
There was a case where I think it was an F4 Phantom was destroyed by, well, I could be wrong. I could be putting two cases together, but there's one where it was kind of like a Ready 5 jet that was deployed to intercept a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And it destroyed it. The UFO like fired a beam at it and fucking disintegrated it.
Yeah.
I think that, if I'm not, it's happened several times. One time it happened in Iran, but definitely happened in the United States too. I just can't remember the exact case. So to your point, yes.
And then I was also thinking, not really related to what I'd mentioned first, but since we filmed this, and I don't know this is the time to deep dive it, and I'll stop prefacing now, but we had the opportunity to hold an orb.
Oh, right.
And, you know, this is coming from a guy who's relatively unimpeachable in this world. Like he's a big deal in it. And he had been given access to,
son, right?
Yes, exactly. An orb. And he was kind enough to bring us to a studio so that we can investigate this thing and hold it. And you're holding this thing, and you're like, how on earth could this fly?
And we need to do like a debrief on that.
We do. I mean, it's one of the most incredible things I've ever experienced.
I don't want to put that out here, but there we found evidence of what you could call hypersonic impact.
Yes.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. The protected.
We found no one has.
No.
Yeah.
It's exclusive here. No, but we found evidence of
We did.
It's right in front of you.
Yes.
Once you
you know what you're
recognize-
looking at.
it was you or Mike that mentioned it
Yes.
first. And after you said
Yes,
it,
Mike
it's like,
mentioned this.
holy shit, that's exactly what it is.
I'm not going to say what Mike mentioned, but he mentioned something. I was like, I can't believe that's what. And then when I went back and reviewed the video, I saw more evidence of it.
Yeah.
And then I went back and reviewed video from General Dynamics.
Yep,
And I was like, holy crap,
This is
we're
it.
on to something. Yes.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And-
That was going to be cool.
And
Because we don't have the money, we can't, we can't show it to you people.
but we were also able to hold a smaller orb that they run a number of tests
Yes.
on that you know, it's not connected to anything. It's a little metal ball that has no seams, but the weight will change in it. The heat will change in it. It will roll on its own. It will do all of these things. And again, you're like,
Yes.
how?
And they're emitting radio signals,
Yeah.
apparently.
That I forget
Yes.
exactly. But they couldn't figure out a rhyme or reason to it when it would start transmitting.
Mhm.
And you're thinking like,
This thing is hollow.
this is hollow.
Yes.
What could possibly
Yes.
be transmitting out of it? So it always brings me back to more questions than answers with all of this. But how much more we know now than when we had initially interviewed Robert here.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's
Yes.
been a pretty big year.
So
as far as
it's
that
gonna
goes.
make sense that we're doing it now.
Yeah.
Because we found way more over this past year and a half.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move.
Yeah.
move.
I think that's maybe a show, really. I don't know at this time what Arrow is going to do with that testimony. I know when Dr. Kirkpatrick, head of Arrow, came before the Senate Armed Services Committee after I gave him my interview, not him, but his people. He stated that they didn't have any evidence of any advanced technology. And I went into great detail how this object shut down my missiles, and we had nothing at that time or now that could have done such a thing. So I don't know how I can make that statement. So whether or not they're trying to slow walk this so-called disclosure, he also claimed that he wasn't getting enough cooperation. I'm sorry, I back up. Not Kirkpatrick himself, but the people that interviewed me claimed that they were not getting cooperation from the Air Force. So I don't know how well, and he claimed that Kirkpatrick now claims that he's got excellent rapport with all the other agencies. So there's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get disclosure from, like I said, the cabal, people that are working within the intelligence community, or they're not going to give up their secrets unless there's an outcry from Congress and the public. And in order to get that, I think we have to have open hearings. We have to have public open hearings from witnesses like myself, the Navy Tic Tac pilots, other witnesses that can come forward. The public can see them on television because the public believes what's on television, right? And if that happens, I think there will be a breakthrough.
So I read your critique of that Senate hearing, and you had said that they were basically softball questions that were thrown at them. What type of questions would you have asked if you were in their position?
Well, the first question I would have asked is when Kirkpatrick says, well, I haven't received anything that tells me there's any advanced technology here. You got to follow up on that. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that there's advanced technology. For example, the Tic Tac pilots talk about seeing this object come out of the water. And other pilots, I think, have talked about seeing the object moving under the water.
Yeah, the transmedium going back and forth between them without losing any speed.
How does that happen? Do we have the technology to build something like that? No, not as far as anybody knows, really. And then these objects are able to go up to altitude, 50,000 feet, I think they report, and then back down to the surface and hover. Do we have anything that can do that? No. So when Kirkpatrick says that, that's the kind of thing you got to nail him down on that. Things like that. I have a list of 10 questions. I don't remember what they are right now, but I could bring that out. I've got 10 questions I would have asked. You know.
Given that it sounds like this cabal is made up of people that are unelected and unaccountable, basically, to anybody besides themselves on that, are these senators impotent to be able to do anything, even if they had asked those questions? Because I guess that's where I kind of, I look at it and I just think, is this a fool's errand? Because we could be, knocking at the gates, demanding information, and they could pretty much just say no at this point, couldn't they?
They could.
Yeah.
And that's what they probably would do. And so what's a senator going to do? He's going to say, well, you're lying. Prove it.
Exactly.
How are you going to prove they're lying? How are you going to prove what the secrets are? Where are they holding them? Are they putting them under their pillows at night? What? That's the problem. Yeah, basically the Congress is pretty well impotent to force intel people to cough up their secrets. First of all, Gillibrand doesn't have a need to know.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Unless you've got a need to know, and that's probably why they haven't come forward to even the President of the United States on these secrets. So they're going to hang on to them, like I said. But if witnesses come forward, convince the public at large, not only in the U.S., but worldwide, that they're telling the truth. Mm-hmm. And you can tell when a person is telling the truth, I think, on something like this. Under oath, I think that'll kick some doors open.
If you were in the position to bring anybody before a Senate hearing like that and grill them and ask them questions, who would it be?
Besides myself?
Besides yourself, yes. Who do you think would move the ball?
I bring in Shendelli. I bring in Robert Jacobs.
Solid.
Yep.
You brought up a really good point in asking, because it does seem like there needs to be the public outcry, right? And we look at how many ufologists, how many people are interested in the subject, but how many people are actually calling their senators, how many people are actually letting them know that this is an important topic. And this kind of goes back to what you're talking about with the dumbing down in society. If you really truly look at the objective and you look at the implications, why does our current responsibilities with going to work and continuing the college education and all these different things still have priority over getting these answers, right? We still devalue these mysteries in the sense of that's going to take a back seat to all my other responsibilities because it's probably not real, or whatever it is. There's like a risk factor there where there's movements like Black Lives Matter, there's movements, social political movements that really kick the door down to get attention. Why is there none for the UAP subject? And then to your point about it could be a fool's errand because they could just choose to say no, right? Which is what they're currently on the trajectory of.
Yes.
I think we talked about this before, where maybe disclosure doesn't come from the government, but that does continue to plant the seed in people's minds and then some level of credibility. But I mean, how cool would it be if we were out in some South American place and just establish a relationship and start live streaming? Hey, we're with our buddy the Grays, and so this is your disclosure. There you go. But like, how does disclosure happen if not in the government, in the private sector?
Well, I mean, even the legislation that was passed since this interview, there were a lot of people with a lot of hope that it was going to do something meaningful, but it got gutted completely before.
What did I say?
Voted on. Of course, no. I agreed with you the entire time.
Are you referring to
but
the
it came
Schumer Act?
down, I believe so. Yeah, where basically anything they deem to threaten national security can be classified and withheld from it, which is fucking everything.
And don't forget that they were trying to pass laws of that regular citizens couldn't make contact with extraterrestrials.
Yeah, there's also a landmine in there that if they deem it an authentic UAP, that it becomes property of the government.
Yeah.
And so,
so all of this is inherently problematic. And this isn't necessarily related to it, but it's something I was thinking of as he was talking on this, is that the beings piloting these crafts could make their presence known at any time.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Myriad ways to do it.
Yeah.
Why don't, and not that we have the answer, but why don't they do it if they could? So does that mean they don't think that we should know either?
I think a good question would be to formulate it this way. And I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. As actually you're uncovering something, is that we most likely made a deal with somebody, right? And we have it seems like we have back engineered a lot of stuff. We have an infrastructure that is global or maybe interstellar, right? But there's a third party, some actors that are coming in and mucking up everything, right? They're going into nuclear sites. They're messing with our aircraft. They're constantly monitoring our our troop movements or our military exercises, things of that nature, right? So you have to wonder, like, is this staged? Is this something that's contrived by the powers that be, or is it really a third party that's kind of like, hey, look at us, we're here too, and or is it both?
Right.
Are some of these instances contrived and staged by powers that be, and some are not? Some are actually legitimately a third party that's not involved in the hierarchy of that was built from the Eisenhower era
Right.
till today, right? You just have that. I think that's that question is a good add-on to your question, right? And I think to believe it's a mix of everything. I think that there's intelligences, beings, if you want to call them, that are not involved in the deal that we've made,
Right.
and are coming in and kind of showing humanity, hey, we're also here. And then, because I was told that increasingly these things were going to happen almost exponentially or geometrically, right? Someone said, I was exposed to people that were very well connected to information, and one of these people said, you will start to see more and more of these craft, or whatever they call them, UAPs, UFOs, whatever you want to refer to them. You'll start seeing them over more and more, and there'll be a day when you can't negate the fact that they exist. Right. So if our government is slow rolling this, or trying to stop this disclosure, but at the same time there's somebody else who's coming in and showing themselves incrementally. That's something to keep in mind.
And that reminds me of something that a point you brought up earlier, that we tend to narrow our lens towards one species, but it's not a fish store. It might be a zoo, right? Where maybe there is something that has an agreement with the government that clears within the lines and follows certain rules. But then we have people like Chris Bledsoe, who has a relationship with things where it's well documented, where Chris Bledsoe calls these orbs in or these UAPs in, and he just has a natural relationship with these things.
Yes.
And is it the same things that we're seeing with the UAPs that has this agreement, or is it another NHI, something different entirely?
Yes.
You have abductees, and like, how valid are their experiences? You have all these things that are dismissed as paranormal. How many times have they tried to make contact? Because maybe they don't really. There might be some that aren't concerned with government approval, and it's just a interspecies contact.
Absolutely,
right?
Yes.
And it's just a way of trying to process it, but we dismiss it as paranormal or a bad dream.
Absolutely,
or
yes.
something
Oh, and there's a kind of like a rule in counterintelligence, or where, and I'm not just from reading, but it's that if kind of like something that you want to keep hidden, or you want to keep away from the public view, right? Kind of like you don't want the public to believe that it exists, right? Then you create a false one, and you blow it up as being false. So you said you brought up abductions, right? And so there's people out there that say abductions were, including our boy Richard Doty, Dick Doty, saying like the U.S. Falsified alien abductions, extraterrestrial abductions, right, of human beings. When he says something, I tend to be super wary of what he's saying, because it could be counterintelligence. I actually look at it as counterintelligence. So I'm thinking like, oh, so you're trying to hide these things, so it means that there might be real extraterrestrial abductions out there, and the government wants people to believe, or not the government, the cabal, whatever, wants people to believe that it's that it doesn't exist, right? That it's all contrived by the Air Force counterintelligence apparatus, and so
You can just point to that straw
Yes.
man argument. Every
Yes,
single
exactly,
time and
yes.
just make the person look ridiculous.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
even thinking
Yep.
it. For sure. I remember mentioning cattle mutilations and things like that as well that they were doing it. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think the things like the chupacabra, cow mutilations are part of more of the disinformation to make it lose credibility, or?
I have
Well,
no idea.
or-
It could be both.
Or exactly, or it's a real thing, and then you put on this information in there to make it look
Right.
because it's a real thing, and they don't
Yeah.
want they want people to they want to discredit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
I feel like the further we've gone with this stuff, and we've been fortunate enough to travel to quite a few places, specifically in South America, where we've had hours of interview of these people that have had experiences with something like the chupacabra or UAPs, whatever it is. And whether or not I believe it to be true, I believe they believe what they're telling me. And if they are lying, like, they deserve a fucking Academy Award, and you should start recruiting for actors down
Yes.
there, because they have nothing to gain
Yes.
from it,
Yeah.
right? Like, they don't, but they tell it with the passion. You can tell them the look in their eyes, like something happened.
Something happened there, yes,
For
especially in San Antonio.
yeah, the pelicanas.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I feel like every one of these segments we end up being like, oh, I don't know,
Yeah.
but we'll keep going.
I'm gonna quote my favorite TV show, The Sopranos. What are you gonna do?
Both, I mentioned those guys. There's Walter Fiegel, who was an Echo Flight Commander. I bring him in. I'd bring in a man by the name of Bradford Runyon, Major Bradford Runyon, who was a B-52 co-pilot. Minot Air Force Base, 1968 UFO encounter in the air. Later, the UFO landed. He drew pictures. The whole crew saw it. This is well documented, very well documented. The entire B-52 crew, which is about, 8 people, saw this object, had radar returns on the object, etc. So that's what I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure I can think of more.
Yeah. So as far as I know, there's a connection between our nuclear missiles and this UAP activity. And I think the furthest back I can go in my mind, at least, is like 1945. There were sightings around a facility that was getting nuclear material. Yes, Hanford. Why do you think they're interested in this? I know we can only surmise and guess as to what it is, but what do you think the connection is there?
Well, I think these beings, and I'll call them beings, or sentient beings controlling these objects, had been visiting for centuries, thousands of years, maybe even longer. They have been observing us, not only us, but other living forms on planet Earth. They have seen
Living forms, sorry.
Life
just in general.
all kinds of life on Earth, yeah. And they want to see us evolve. And we have been evolving, right? Technologically, socially, etc. To the point where we've now produced these weapons of mass destruction. Weapons that can destroy all life on planet Earth. There is a real threat, even today, that this could happen. The use of nuclear weapons, which would be highly destructive to the entire planet and life on this planet. This is a precious gem, this planet we live on. Precious because of the life and the consciousness of the people and the living things that are here. And they probably want us to see it protected. They want to see us protect this planet and the living things on it. And so they see that we've developed this weapon that can destroy all of it. And I think they're warning us. These incidents have simply been messages of warning. Take care to get rid of these weapons. Just get rid of them. And we can do that. I mean, we came close before the Russians invaded Ukraine. We had the SALT II treaty. that brought the limit down, number of weapons to 1,500, I think, active on each side of Russia and the U.S. And we had abolition, complete abolition, as an objective, as an ultimate objective. Well, now that treaty is out the window. And now you've got other countries that are involved in wanting nuclear weapons. Iran probably has now the technology, I'm sure, to build another nukes. We've already got 9 countries in the world. 2 of them are at war with each other. Count 4, if you count the U.S. In a proxy war with Russia. But Pakistan and India are at war. They have nuclear weapons. These weapons could be used any day. And the Russians and the U.S. have miniaturized the weapons. Now they call them tactical nukes, which we can use in little tactical situations in war. But you use any nuke. Those tactical nukes are 20 kilotons, the same range as the Hiroshima bomb, right? They could be used at any time. Once they're used, the genie's out of the bottle, right? The countries are going to say, well, we can use these too in our little wars. Before you know it, they're using the bigger weapons, and before you know it, you got World War III, nuclear war.
So I guess I have 2 questions on that. One would be, do you think we're closer to using nuclear weapons now or back in 1967 when this happened to you? And also, given what you just said, do you view these entities as being benevolent, malevolent, ambivalent? I mean, how do you see their actions?
Yeah. In 1962, of course, we came the closest during the Cuban Missile Crisis because we both the U.S. and Russia were threatening to use them in nuclear war. Right now, we're the closest since then, absolutely. Like I said, in 1960.
Yeah, we're getting dark.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
My first one, which is the same with a lot of these arguments on it, is that we view everything through this anthropomorphic lens.
Yep.
And not to keep using the term fool's errand over and over again, but like it is. We can't think outside of the box that we're encased in as being like humans. And if this is a non-human intelligence fucking around with the nukes, we might not even be able to perceive of what it is that they're doing with that. So I also think if they really wanted to stop it, again, done.
Yeah.
Right? Like just stop.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have to play these like little paltry games where you're shutting them off for a second. If they wanted to disarm them, they would.
Yeah. So you have to the kind of thought experiment would be, why aren't they? Are they following certain type of rules that they can't break, or is another player stopping them from doing that? Because they seem to be omnipotent, but they're not omnipotent, but they're not using their powers. So those are my 2 trains of thought. Like, why aren't they? Are they following a certain rule, or is somebody else in the way of them able to do that, or why not?
Yeah, because if they've been here for centuries, they still permitted Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yes.
And so it's not so much protecting mankind. Like, my initial reaction is, well, maybe they cohabitate the planet. That's why they don't want the planet destroyed by the fallout. But then it just goes back to that question. Well, why not just make all of them useless?
Could it be, and this might be something that we have to edit out afterwards because it's so dumb, but
no, it's staying.
It's staying.
Playing alive.
It's staying now.
Yeah, it'll be the little teaser. Again, going back to like the anthropomorphic lens on it, what if these beings evolved in a way that is fundamentally different than ours, and despite having the ability to traverse like space and time, they don't have nuclear power? What if they're running off something entirely different, whether it's like the electric universe model or something along those lines, and yet they're just interested?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's
probably not the case.
No,
but
no. I mean, no. I think it's more obvious than not. What you just said is like, no, they're not. They're highly advanced beings. How do I put this? But yeah, if you put even with human beings, right? If you put them far enough apart, they come up with the wildest fucking the wildest rules of how to how their society will live, right? Like you have Americans, and then you go around the world, and you have like Cantonese people, Mongolians, you have Germans, you have like exactly, and now make it even further out, right? Make it like a couple billion or light years away from us, and what type of societies are going to be, and how they evolve. Yeah, so like even if they are humanoid, they might have come up in a completely different way that doesn't it will defy things that we're used to, how our society is run.
Yeah.
So
I remember listening to somebody talk about they were talking about like Atlantis,
Yes.
some other places. Again, don't know that any of this is real or whatever, but they talked about how
there's
you know
definitely
when you
evidence.
look at the pyramids or these structures all over the planet, like we don't have the technology now
Mhm.
to do that. So maybe they had evolved in a way in which like consciousness was at the forefront and they were able to tap into that, but that doesn't mean they had fucking iPads.
No.
though.
No,
So like,
Right.
Well,
that's my thought
there
process.
is no, yeah, absolutely. There is some evidence for cyclical history in humanity, and I think who was it that I was listening to that Terrence Howard said it. He's like, the Earth could be destroyed today. A billion years from now, you will see human beings kind of going in the same direction, right? And that's what I believe in, right? I don't. It's gonna be sound dumb because I don't have the time to explain completely, but I don't believe that there's evolution in the way people think it is, right? And I think that I talked about it the last time. The human form, and it's universal across humanoids and in humans, specifically humans too. There's humanoids and humans, genetic humans. It's a prevailing kind of like if you blow a bubble, it's not gonna in this universe. It's not gonna come out. So bubble's not gonna be triangular,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's gonna have a certain shape, right? Same thing with this conscious form. I'm sure there's other ones like dolphins and things like that that are conscious, highly intelligent beings, but overall, this is what you get. What was your question? Because I'm going to attention. Sorry.
It wasn't so much a question. It was just a different way of looking at it, that perhaps these beings evolved in a way in which they didn't have nuclear
Yes,
technology.
exactly. Yes. So they use
something
yeah.
different.
Then we went into Atlantis, right? So circling back to that. So I do believe that there was a civilization that existed a long time ago. I don't know if they had iPads or not, but they were they came out of the I think it was like the golden age with the I don't know what the name of that yuga is. And then after after fall of Atlantis, we went into the Kali Yuga, and that's where we had the Stone Age, and people were kind of had to like, I don't want to say they were dumb, but they were unable to tap into the all prevailing consciousness, the what
Akashic
the
record.
Akashic records. That's how I think people dumb out. They don't dumb down in a way that's a brain power, although that it is affecting a little bit, but in a certain way. But it's more in your ability to tap into the prevailing consciousness, right? Remember, I was talking about jiu-jitsu and how like I thought I invented this, and then I look at a video from the 60s, and somebody was already doing the same exact thing.
Yeah,
and I was like, God damn, I'm not as smart as I thought, but I do think that something came to me, that the knowledge was out there, and I was able to tap into it, and that's going to happen more and more as we come out of into the go into the Copper Age. I think that's where it's coming, right? Or the Luciferian Age, right? As our planet starts entering that, and so to your point, The history is cyclical, but it's also based on. It's very complex because it's based on the movement of the planet going in and out of the galactic circle. So, I don't know how it is in other planets, but because our human experience is that we're spiritually very volatile. We're not consistent, and that inconsistency comes from that the galactic energies not being consistently hitting us. And yeah, sorry, I went to a tangent.
That makes perfect.
How long was
sense.
I out?
Yeah. No, so if I'm following, so I think that the right word for it would be like a Gnostic point of view, in the sense that like we're not learning something, we're remembering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
What it is, and
Yes.
you could tie that into our conversation earlier today with like once something is put into the morphic fields, therefore it's easier for more people to essentially, even like the jujitsu thing today, you recreated the wheel.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right? Like you didn't see that wheel before. You'd never seen something.
I've never seen anything like that.
And you recreated it.
Yes.
And it's probably easier to do so because somebody has done it in the past.
In the past, yes.
So does that mean that eventually we will be able to create all of the things?
We'll be able to recreate. Yeah, like I've gone into like it's going to sound scary, but we're going into like a Luciferian age. It's going to last like I think like 1,200 years. I don't know. I got to talk to the guy that knows about this, but the Copper Age, and we're going to see like incredible technologies, but at the same time a lot of backstabbing and a lot of like me, right? And coming out of that, then we'll go into a Silver Age and a Golden Age, and I believe that from what I've heard people like Robert Monroe and stuff like that, I believe that goes less into technology and more into being in tune with the universe and our environment. Yeah. And we are the technology. Yeah.
So yeah, this is all piecing it together, because as I understand it, what you're saying is we don't only have an orbit, we also have an oscillation that dips us in and out of the Milky Way, and the exposure we have to radiation and the universe, because we don't live in a vacuum. We actually live in a universe. It impacts our consciousness. But this goes back to earlier what you were saying about being dumbed down, not necessarily intellectually, but because post Isaac Newton, we've become very physical. And this goes back to what you said, where maybe they didn't have iPads because the iPad is predicated on our local sensory.
Yes, exactly.
So all our current technology revolves around our ability to interact with things in this three-dimensional space, rather than really getting in touch with our consciousness or spirituality, as people say it, and aligning it with the oscillation. So then maybe we start interfacing our command and control of our non-local consciousness or things to develop technology in that sense. And maybe that's why they may be so different.
So going back to Luciferianism, right? The iPad is the false technology, right? This is the real technology. The consciousness is the real technology, and that's what we're being sold. And bro, I love my iPad as much anyway. I'm watching cats all day, all night long, till 3 a.m. But we're being sold this promise of like a better world through technology, right? Where in reality, it's like our potential is so great,
right,
that we're gonna humanity as a whole is gonna have to go through that step, because that's what happens with the cycles. They're gonna have to go through that. I think the real evolution is actually spiritual, inward, and the real is not physical, right? Because we were given this body with it's kind of like when you watch a video of an iPhone, you're like, oh, I didn't know that I could do that with my iPhone, right? The same thing with the body. And so the ascension, right? Once we learn all these lessons, after I don't know how many cycles, you're like, okay, now you can ascend to the next, in the game, right? That's where the ascension. That's where ascension is.
And it tracks based on our biological design, where with fight or flight, as long as we're in this what we consider a lower density state of consciousness, where we're in fight or flight constantly, we can only pay attention to what's biologically useful for this avatar we call the human body, right? Because we need the human body to function, but it's an integral part of the experience. It hosts our consciousness. But as long as we're fighting over resources, when we're at war, we're fighting, when when there's no abundance, we're in a competition for food security, energy security, all these different things. Not until we come to a place where we have the space, where we no longer have to focus just on what's biologically useful. And that's one of the amazing things with Paul Smith's remote viewing program, developed at Stanford Research Institute. They developed a way for everybody to experience non-local sensory perception to show that this is real. Everybody has this capability,
Yes.
but we just have to be able to allow the signal to come in by turning down the background noise, because our day-to-day background noise is so high with the fight or flight stuff that we don't pay attention to the signals. A lot of times when things happen, we dismiss it as an anomalous parapsychological experience, if we even want to classify it as parapsychology. But a lot of the paranormal and a lot of parapsychological is really the true universe.
Yeah, the true universe, exactly. Is the reality, is the real technology. And going back to what you said about fighting for resources and being grounded, that's where you start getting into satanic or Malachian consciousness, right? Because that's like that grounds you like way down there, where you're not thinking about the you as a whole, right, in the universe, and resources not being they're not being finite. If you read, I'm going to make this point really quick because I want to let Jeff speak. But there's a gentleman called, his name is Buckminster Fuller. He wrote a book called Synergetics, and he talks about how like in design, like this guy's so freaking smart, of how the resources in Earth are really not as finite as we think. And even with, like, I think he gave a crazy number of people. I'm not going to exaggerate here, so I'm not going to say it, but it was like even with a great number of billions of people on Earth, you can still feed all of them. What's happening is this satanic Malachian consciousness that keeps the resources from being distributed, right? And that has to happen. All of these things have to happen, right? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying when I say satanic is like people are gonna, my Christian friends are gonna go like, oh my God, Josh. When I say satanic or Lucifer, I'm not saying that's bad. It just has to happen. It's things in nature that have to happen for humans to keep ascending to the next stage. So.
And for the listeners who might think we went off on a religious or spiritual tangent, this is actually the same exact topic. I think what happens is these are non-human intelligences, but during the old days, they tried, it was codified into religious purposes, right? Yeah. And largely religion was psyops for colonialism. Yeah, to have a monotheistic one ruler.
Oh, you didn't see my meme today.
Gonna learn today.
I never been to which one you're talking about.
But really, when we're saying satanic, we're talking about an NHI having an influence over something.
I'm using like maybe like 6,000-year-old terms, right? Because he's coming out of Babylon, and like
I was gonna say, I feel like just from the outside, because I know what you mean, because we talk so much, but to clarify, when you say satanic, what you're referring to in that sense, and you could expand upon that to like Malachian as well, but like you're not talking about it in like I'm going to an evangelical church. About burning in hell.
No,
not at all.
No, I'm talking about it in the full spectrum of consciousness in the universe, right? There's negative, completely negative, and there's like positive. And somewhere along that wheel, because it's the true light, right? The love and stuff, and then you have like complete selfishness and self-absorption, which is satanic, and then you have like stuff in between. I'm not a complete expert. We have a friend that is really, really good in that, but again, just from studying guys like Rudolf Steiner, and who consider himself a Christian. Was the other lady? We talked about her a while ago. The fat lady, Russian.
Madam
Helena Blavatsky.
The last name.
I'm thinking about the lady from South Park.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about, though. And she was integral to the Germans as well.
Yes, exactly. Yes, all of that. So I'm talking about the consciousness, and the terms I'm using sound Abrahamic, but they really are. I just used it. Sumerian, Babylonian. Right, those come from like way back then. And of course it evolved, and we now talk about Satan, but they had different names back then, and Moloch and things like that. But we went to a tangent. I don't even know what we're talking about.
I think we're talking about NHIs and the implications here. With technology, or how we always look at things through our own narrow perspective when we really don't know how other intelligences may have evolved and how they interface with their technology and what influences that. And if we look at religion as codifying information that's derived from real data points
Yes.
with this greater universe
Yes.
of things, then to go from the position that everything you described is a universal thing amongst all intelligences, then we could start maybe speculating on some incentives about what's controlling the information and why that may extend beyond what we think is of value, which we might value money, we might value social control, we might value power, but that may not be it. It may be more on the level that you're talking about, on the grand universal scale of consciousness. There's something there that we're missing.
Yeah.
Like, what is the incentive? Right.
Exactly.
No, great points. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
67. There were about 67, total about 67,000 nuclear bombs, if you will, available to be used. 67,000. My weapon, the Minuteman 1, had an 800 kiloton nuclear weapon on top of each missile, right? So, like I said, right now we're still in a very precarious situation. Even Bulletin of Atomic Scientists says we're about, 90 seconds to
that clock is right at the
doomsday. We're getting close. So we're at the most precarious situation right now of nuclear war than we have been since '62. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Obviously, we know what your opinion is of nuclear weapons now. I think it's important for people to know that at one time your job was pretty much to initiate the destruction of humanity on Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Please explain your mindset at the time that you were commanding Bruce.
Sure.
Bruce O'Sullivan.
Mm-hmm. You know, at the time I was in charge of nuclear weapons in the military. I was a military man. I followed orders. Like I said, I went through the Air Force Academy. I was a completely career military person, and if I'd been given the order, I would have fired those missiles.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have. We knew what the impact would be. We knew Russia would retaliate, and we'd retaliate again, and we'd have a nuclear holocaust throughout the world. But like I said, that's what I would have done. Of course, today I feel completely different. I'm fighting against that possibility, and I'm trying to, bring that message to the world that we have got to get back to on course to completely abolish all nuclear weapons. And I know some people will say that's impossible. You're never going to get rid of, all the nukes, but we have to at least try and make it an, international effort, international crimes to even own or have produced any nuclear device weapon.
Absolutely. What led you to get out of the military?
Well, in 1971, I was still being asked to join secret groups within the Air Force. I didn't want to do that.
Is this outside of the psychiatrist incident?
Yeah, this was another incident here in LA. When I was at the LA Air Force Station, they wanted me to join up with, I'll just say, a secret group. Also, the Vietnam War had been raging, and I lost a lot of friends in Vietnam. And I was convinced that was a horrible situation we were in. Didn't want to be a part of it anymore. I basically resigned in protest of that also. Yeah.
What did you go do after that?
Well, I went skiing. The only thing I could think of I wanted to do was to go skiing. So I took my family and we went to Denver.
Quick question, because I want to move on to his personal experience.
That's what I was going next.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, yeah, but one before that, because I want to circle back to the cabal. Obviously, you were kind of they were trying to recruit you for secret programs to control you. But at what point, when did you, and how did you realize the existence of the cabal? And it had to have been a kind of like a pivotal moment where a line of demarcation where you were like, someone's trying to recruit me, and then you're like, oh, I'm starting to see that there's an actual group controlling this information.
Okay, as far as how I got kind of clued into this international cabal, I think it started with Stanton Friedman. And I also met Robert Woods and his son, who released the Majestic 12 documents. And then Stanton Friedman got a hold of those and started researching the authenticity of those documents. For your audience, the Majestic 12 group was supposedly a group set up under the Truman administration just after the Roswell incident. And they were a group of scientists and military people were assigned the task of studying the UFO phenomenon initially.
Mm-hmm.
So
awesome.
Yeah.
Any thoughts? No, go ahead.
Just the weight that he carried on his shoulders and the fact that he just wanted to go skiing afterwards, just like forget about all that stuff. Kind of speaks to the magnitude of the responsibilities he had, huh?
Yeah, that's why I asked my question. I always like it. I not always, but I do get feel self-conscious interrupting. I don't like to do it, but I didn't want that to. I think it's really important for people to know, like, yeah, you see the Robert Salas now and what he believes in and all those things, but the contrast is so great. It has to lend credibility to what he's saying now, and I wanted to make sure that people saw that.
I thought it was an awesome question. I mean, it humanizes so many things for me. I remember a line, and it was something to the effect of like, the guy who dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki is somebody's son and somebody's next door neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can have like this juxtaposition between Robert, who, as we know him, as this stand-up guy, this freedom fighter, he's fighting for peace and all these things. But at one point, he was willing to press the button and do that. So when I was listening to it, I was like, can we extrapolate that out to the cabal as well? If he was going to be recruited into it, it's so easy to have like this low-hanging fruit where you think of this like centralized group of power and just being like, oh, they're nefarious and they're this, that, and the other thing. But could they also be people just trying to do the best with what they got at this point?
Yeah.
I mean, that's equally as valid as anything else.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. And so I feel like because you asked that question, it allowed me to like kind of humanize the people on the other side.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking them as like the other.
No, it's
They're probably guys just like us.
Yeah, it's really easy to, like you said, to do that. And I know, you know me, I do that all the time. Is to kind of hate them. But at the same time, like I said, these things, believe like everything, there's a purpose to the universe, and so they have a role to play. And and at the same time, like you said, maybe they're doing the best that they can with what they have right now. Maybe they have no other option.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to think about that.
Yeah, and coming from the position of being ready to destroy mankind to the opposite position where he's willing to give up the security of those weapons for the betterment of the planet. You know, that's kind of saying something, right? Because our nuclear weapons really is our fail-safe. But he's now in a position where he wants to try to abolish it as much as possible. And it almost seems like if we had this UAP technology, that would render nuclear weapons irrelevant to some degree. I don't know how true it is.
Yeah, no, I heard an argument from somebody that, again, that I trust, and that part of the technology for propulsion for UAP is way more dangerous than nuclear weapons. As far as weaponizing it. So, I mean, but still, there's a lot of technology that could benefit humanity greatly, like for medical purposes, limb regeneration, life extension, cancer is the biggest thing right now, I think. Yep. So
Yeah, it's a lot of little nuggets.
Yes.
That's a big deal that you just dropped there.
Yeah. Yes.
Because we're talking about regenerative medicine and things like
Okay.
that. You look at phenomenons of things that happen with women like Geraldine Orozco, who was, I think, like several months pregnant, and then she had no signs of pregnancy following that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the guy who had a torn ligament, and then he had a brand new ligament. Like, I would love to get abducted. Just fix my wrist. Like, fix my injuries.
Well, I would ask for better stuff, but remember the guy with there's a case somewhere in the world, because I want to interview this guy, but he injured his arm. It became necrotic. We all know that you don't come back from necrosis. You have to amputate or remove the flesh.
Yeah.
And the guy said, "No, my alien friends are gonna help me." Yeah. And people thought they were crazy. There's medical records on this, right? There's medical, like he went to the hospital. The doctor said, "We're gonna have to amputate your arm."
Yeah.
And if we leave it longer, you're gonna sepsis is gonna come in. You're gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was like, "No." Disappeared for a day, came back, and he had a brand new arm. A brand new arm. And the doctor was like, "This is impossible. Like, we're worried about the guy." And so but that technology, when Stephen, I was gonna say Richard Greer. Richard Greer. Stephen Greer talked about something similar, but he said that there were sectors of the breakaway civilization that have this technology in centers, right? And they have this technology to regenerate and extend human life for very, very, very long time. Man,
yeah, and
sucks.
If we look at what I think he was talking about, non-local manufacturing, where the UAP technology allows you to decouple from space-time, so that's how you're able to get the isotopic levels at the concentrations that's normally. I mean, apparently this material that has been given its rounds that could be responsible for UAP technology can be made, but it'd be billions of dollars to make this little piece. So
the wafer stuff.
Yeah,
I've seen something like that.
Yeah,
I've personally seen something.
But apparently, he was saying something about you're decoupling from space time, so you could manufacture these materials at those isotopic rates because it doesn't have the same level of decay when you decouple from space time. So then, it's just speculation that how they're kind of able to regenerate living tissue. You know, if you
yes. Okay.
Because we got stem cells and we got
stem cells. We got like this PRP.
Yeah.
This gonna make sense from stuff that we've learned, but I'm drawing only from what's his name, Stephen Greer. So no one else told me this. Just heard it from Stephen Greer, but it makes sense because we've been learning stuff from the gateway stuff, right? And our energy bodies and how like.
Are you referring to the Monroe Institute, the Gateway?
Yes,
tapes,
yeah. and other people have talked about this. How like we have this kind of like when you have an OB out of body experience, you exit and you kind of look the same, right? So there's obviously this holographic projection that you carry with you. That's not the way you really look. Right, but you look like that because that's your most recent memory of being something, right? And so, but drawn from that energy body, right? I think what I heard Stephen Greer talk about is like there's somehow using that hologram to regenerate your limb, right?
That's going from that inherent memory.
Yes,
yourself.
Yes.
It's like your DNA has.
No, even beyond that, no, even beyond that is your actual etheric body. That's what will not even like reaching to the DNA. Even like there's a higher level of medicine, and it's like this light medicine.
That reminds me of the phantom pain.
Yes,
when people get
that's exactly
arms chopped off, and they could still feel their hand.
And you can trace it back to the brain, but there's also a more ethereal factor to it.
Yeah, because I think they captured images, right?
Yes,
and there's still an outline of their energetic outline of their hand.
Yes, that's insane. That's crazy.
It is. It's wild.
Only insane if you buy into the
physical world,
physical dogma. Yes.
Yeah.
Physical dogma. And this 3-dimensional limitation that we're in.
Yes.
And we limit it to the kind of Newtonian materialism kind of thing. But that just brings us to what we don't know, because we've been so dumbed down, not intellectually, but in the grand scheme of consciousness, that we haven't spent enough time investigating consciousness. And
Mm-hmm.
kind of goes back to Robert's tone in, call him Robert because he's the homie.
Yeah, he's the homie.
What are we talking about?
They give
Robbie.
his wife gave us crystals.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, see, that's the plot twist that we're waiting for.
Yes.
You know, getting to the next level of things. But, you know, I don't know what compels him. What argument is compelling enough for him to go from knowing that nuclear weapons are fail-safe to we don't need them. We should get rid of them. They're more of a danger than they are a benefit to our national security, kind of thing. So, yeah.
I don't think that's a hard leap, to tell you the truth, to think like the world would be better off if we did.
No, yes,
right?
absolutely,
Like,
yes.
Now leaving like one person with them and everybody else getting rid of it, that's ridiculous, right? But if you could abolish,
If you
them
could
the way they
abolish it,
used to-
yes.
yeah, but
Yes.
I think that's a layup. Most people.
I think the ability to abolish nuclear weapons is going to take a bigger leap in consciousness than what we can see right now.
Because it's a fear-driven
Yes.
necessity
Yes.
at this
Mhm.
point, where we need them because someone might use it against us.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And I think like going back to the Robert thing, and I'm not trying to speak for him on this, but at least for me, the deeper I go with all of these things, you can feel overwhelmed by how much is out there. And then I always come back to the idea of like the only thing I can control is myself
Right.
on this.
Mhm.
And Robert and his wife like kind of epitomized
Oh,
that
yeah,
in the
amazing.
sense that like they have a addition built onto their house specifically for meditation and insight. And I think anybody that puts in that level of time to going like inward is going to probably come up with something along these lines
Yes.
where that's better for you than what the common narrative
Oh,
is.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
No, they're definitely tapped into something. I don't know. They met at these things happened to him, but then he met his wife, and then his life took a complete turn in a different direction.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd be the same person without these two events.
Yeah, there's a guy named Ernie Hernandez who looks at the consciousness aspect as if you experience any one of the paranormal, parapsychological, or UAP thing, then it unlocks a mode of perception in your brain where now you can start perceiving all
Yes.
these things. And what's really interesting, it doesn't seem that Robert or his wife was kind of read into that hypothesis,
Mhm.
right? But all the signs are there. You know, everything they talk about, it really does coalesce that idea that they are part of the greater reality now.
Yeah.
You know, both on the spiritual level and just walking up to the house, you can already start to sense it with the various icons they have, whether it's a Taoist icon or an angelic icon and the gems and things of that nature. It was really amazing to feel and experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I expected a completely different person than the guy that opened the door.
Me too.
He was still in like his sweatpants and sweatshirt and kind of like messy hair, but a big smile.
Yeah.
And
Radiant energy.
yes.
For sure.
And so, but no, I'm excited. We're gonna leave it off here.
Yeah, that's a lot for another show. It's now 8 p.m.
Yeah. Perfect.
And then we'll pick it up. I wasn't expecting to do a third part.
Yeah, we got a few more clips to go through, but I think we're getting to the end there.
Yeah, no, we have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Which one did we just finish?
5. We've 10.
So we're on 11.
as
for
you
the
said,
next one.
yeah.
I'm just going to make a note
11
for
for
next
next
time,
one,
so
yes.
do that.
So either we do a next. I think we might as well just do a next one. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Awesome.
No, awesome interview. And I know we took a lot of tangents, but that's
It's kind
I
of
think that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
again, we don't know where it's going to take us. So let's just keep going further.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well,
For sure.
And thanks to anyone that watches this YouTube video.
Yeah.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Call to
It is.
action.
I have to.
Buy us a coffee.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks.
All right, thanks.
All right, guys.